dat je luistert naar een nieuwe aflevering van Paul de Vries vanuit de podcaststudio in Ede met de missie de online automotive beter te maken. Dit doet Paul met de volgende partners met dezelfde missie: Marktplaats, Calldrip, CARMEN Automotive BDC, Findio, Used Car Controller en tweedehands.be.
En dan onze hoofdgast Brian Benstock. Brian is hier 2 jaar geleden geweest in Bunnik in Amsterdam bij Marktplaats. En daar hebben we een paar presentaties gedaan. Volgens mij hebben we er een stuk of 7 gedaan in 2 dagen. We waren keimoe. En wat mij daar is van blijven hangen is dat je als dealer graag beter wil worden. Hè? En dat wil ik ook. Hè? We willen de online automotive beter maken. Maar sommige dealers zeggen het en sommige dealers doen het. En hier hebben we een dealer die het absoluut doet. Dus als je een dealer moet volgen, je moet niks. Maar als je er een zou moeten volgen, volg Brian Benstock. Dus Brian, welcome.
Welcome. Great to be with you, Paul. Great to see you again.
Yeah, it was a delight. So thank you very much that you take the time to talk to us, to our audience about everything about the online automotive space, especially as a dealer.
Yeah, it's changing, right? It's changing every day, every hour.
Yeah,
it's an interesting space right now.
And I had the CEO of Subaru, the Netherlands, before you in the stream, and I said to him, if I ask Brian if he can put on a Subaru dealership tomorrow, I think he will do it right away.
That's true. It's a very good product. They're doing extremely well, and I like a lot of the things I see coming out of Subaru.
Yeah, I can imagine that. So I talked to the audience that you were here 2 years ago and that we did about 7 or 8 events in 48 hours, right?
It was action-packed. I mean, there was no rest for the weary. You had the schedule every minute booked, and I like it that way. It was intense, great people asking great questions. The audiences were fantastic, and the venues were beautiful. So look forward to going out there again.
Yeah, and on that space, we talked about it before now, that we are going to put on an event maybe in March next year. Okay. That we're going to invite you back again in real time, in real life, without COVID and anything. And that we are going to do another, not 8 events, but maybe 4 events in 2 or 3 days, right?
I'd like to get to see your beautiful country and your beautiful city. I didn't see it. I was ping-pong all around. It was exciting nonetheless.
Yeah. Brian, about everything what happened in the world, can you explain the last 6 months, what the impact of all the regulations, all the lockdowns, reopenings, etc., made on your business, and what did you learn about that one?
Well, 6 months doesn't tell the story. We have to go back really to February of last year. I thought this was a European problem. In fact, February 22nd, I was in Las Vegas watching Tyson Fury, Deontay Wilder box, and I was there with 6,000 or so Europeans in Las Vegas. And COVID was something that was far away. Less than a month later, our businesses were locked down. And in March and April, I was really starting to lose buckets of money as we were not able to open our facilities in any way, shape, or form. And, and I looked at my goal sheet, Paul, and my goal sheet that I'd written in December of 2019 for the year 2020 projected that 2020 was going to be the best year in our history. And imagine that, having that as a goal and a target, and in February and March and April, being completely closed down. Well, we know how that story evolved, right? The year ended up being very, very productive. And in fact, we achieved our goal. It was our most productive year in the history of the company, nearly doubling the net profit of the dealership. And a couple of reasons for that. One of the reasons, we were aggressively buying inventory when it was available. I think that was the right strategy for us. We saw what was happening in Europe. We looked to Hong Kong, where obviously they had been impacted by the pandemic before we were, so we could look there to see what the future was going to look like. And they started to come out of this, and we saw sedan sales and used car sales really booming. And we said, wow, imagine if that same trend happens here. And many dealers had started to cut back on their inventory. Many dealers had abandoned sedans and were trying to unload their used car inventory. So we took a look at arguably what was going to be next month's newspaper and made a bold prediction, and we bought a bunch of cars. Now, two things were going to happen. The business wasn't going to turn around, and we were in trouble anyhow. When the business was going to be turn around, and we were going to be positioned correctly. And as luck would have it, we were positioned correctly. And May, June, July, August, as business started to open up, we were able to do some pretty significant business that continued right into the 2021 year.
Yeah, but are you still in that phase that because you have still the inventory shortage on the new car side, on the used car side, how do you handle that?
Well, I'll say this: we in December of 2020 and January of 2021 and February of 2021, we purchased a lot of inventory. Dealers were still turning down inventory because winter was here. And we were able to purchase a lot of inventory. We saw what was going on with some of the other OEMs and thought that the same chip shortage that was impacting them might very well visit us at Honda and Acura. And it did. Fortunately, we were positioned correctly, and we've had the 2020 ended up being our best year. This year is going to surpass that by a very significant mark because of the shortage, because we had inventory, and because of several other factors that are going on all simultaneously.
Yeah, and did you learn then that your online presence as a dealer made the biggest impact, or was it the execution on your plans which you already had?
Paul, it's a combination of all of the above, right? We started pickup and delivery for service in late 2016, and we're rolling by the end of 2017. It was fortuitous for us that we had this in motion as there was a complete lockdown. Customers didn't want to leave their house. And here's the crazy thing. The safest place to be besides your house was in your automobile. So customers returned to their cars, and these cars needed to be serviced. So we were able to provide pickup and delivery service for the customers because we already had that infrastructure in place. So that I think was a bit of good thinking and planning on our part to enable us to use that pickup and delivery to keep our fixed operations going. The easiest then, and the next pivot, was to use that pickup and delivery service platform initiative to do pickup and delivery for customers' cars when they wanted to purchase cars. Many customers, and we saw this in China, many customers abandoned mass transit. And it makes sense, right? You don't want to be in a packed subway car. And oddly enough, in China and in the United States, and particularly in New York, they started reducing the number of trains that were running because of the lack of demand. So that meant that the trains that did run were packed during the pandemic. So many people were avoiding mass transit. Many people were avoiding buses, and many people were avoiding rideshare like Lyft and Uber. That caused demand again for our products to go up. We were well positioned for that and to provide and to pivot services like pickup and delivery. And think of, we have a chain of a pizza delivery here in the United States called Domino's Pizza. And I'm not sure if you have Domino's in Europe. Domino's Pizza here, they had to pivot also. And what they did is they would, deliver the pizza and put it in the trunk of your car. And I thought, well, that makes a lot of sense. And so it's interesting how we all became creative during the pandemic out of necessity. In fact, I would say that the pandemic has accelerated digital retailing in the automotive space by 5 to 10 years.
And is that also the case because you were saying that you're buying sedans and the base was that SUVs was the most dominant one and sedans was on the decline? That people entering the new car market again, that they didn't want an SUV but just a sedan?
Yeah, and I think that was, was really an interesting discovery for us, right? We ordered 100 extra Accords and 100 extra Civics at the beginning of the pandemic, And of course, that gives you the travel rate, so you're earning more sedans, and that was a good strategy for us. It played out well, and it's still there. The demand for sedans has returned, and imagine many of the manufacturers in the U.S. have moved away from sedan, in particular Ford. So I think that put us in the right place at the right time with the right inventory. Cars like the Honda Civic and the Accord are fantastic choices, and the Acura TLX. These were fantastic offerings for our customers, and customers were able to get them at the right price at the right time. Keeping in mind the interest rate environment that we're in particularly in the U.S., is the lowest interest rate environment we've been in 40 years. And in 40 years that I've been doing this.
Yeah, but money is worthless, right?
Well, no, money's cheap. It's not worthless, and I'll take all you have. If you think it's worthless, send it right here. It may be worth less, but it's not worthless.
No, okay. No, you got that right. One question, Brian. When we traveling in the Netherlands, you were saying to me something which sticks for me forever, is that the turn of your inventory was on a massive scale. And the average turn on the inventory in Holland is about 5 times a year. Mm. And people are saying that's very good. Yeah, or 6 times, then you are Champions League. What is your turn?
Our used car inventory turns at 18 times a year right now, and we've been as high as 22. We've slowed the turn down a little bit because of the difficulties associated with gaining inventory right now. But we're running a solid 18 turns of the inventory a year.
So if you are turning your inventory 15 times a year, then you are actually angry.
Well, it's just not. It's not the throughput that we're looking for, you know. And again, the faster you turn the inventory, the more dollars per day. The more dollars per day, the higher the ROI, the higher the yield. And I think, you know, it's a different mindset than what we used to have. We were looking for gross profit, and gross has to also take into consideration time. And you would take less gross profit if you could do it in less time, and you can have more turn. And in doing so, you'd make a lot more money. And in fact, I'll give you a math formula it's unbelievable when you look at it. But you could make $168 for a car, front end profit to back end profit. If you turn that car or that space every day on a 100 car inventory, that would be $500,000 profit per month. That's 100 cars at $168 profit per space per day. That would be $500,000 profit. And no one's suggesting that you only work on a margin of $168, but it shows you could have a margin that thin, and if you turn fast enough on every 100 cars that you had, you would make $500,000. And you know, to replicate that, you would have to make $5,000 a car on those 100 cars to get the same kind of profitability. And I would say this: I'd much rather create far more customers and have a competitive price advantage than hold out for that $5,000 per car. And this is especially true in
Steeds meer collega's gebruiken Used Car Controller. Taxeren, calculeren, publiceren of auto's verhandelen met je persoonlijke handelsplatform? Met 1 abonnement geeft Used Car Controller je controle over alle kritische gebruikte autoprocessen. Zo maakt Used Car Controller je tot sterkste in je vak. Findio is de merkonafhankelijke automotive partner. Findio is er voor uw klanten en u. Zo kunt u zorgeloos ondernemen en uw rendement verbeteren. Uw online leads opvolgen binnen 30 seconden? Dat kan met Calldrip. Vraag direct een demo aan.
Urban markets like we were in, because we have a limited number of spaces. If I was in the country and I had unlimited storage, well, I could potentially hold out for the right margin for that car. But I don't even think that's a good strategy, because you know, cars like produce, they age, and you know, it's like a banana. I think a good friend of ours, Dale Pollock, talks about bananas, and there's a green banana, there's a yellow banana, and then there's a black banana. And you know, and a car, I think, goes through the same thing. It's fresh, it's ripe, and then it's no good, and you're chasing a loss on the car. So I'd much rather turn the bananas when they're in their prime for the right margin.
Hey, and Brian, we talked also about the importance when you sell a car in your dealership, right? Then the process is that they are also going to F&I. And F&I here in Holland is, we have different rules, etc. But still within the rules, you can manage to do something with F&I. How important is F&I for your bottom line?
Well, it's extremely important. The finance products and the offerings there create an opportunity for a dealer to add to the yield on the transaction. And remember, you've already got the customer, you've got the sale, and then anything that you do there incrementally increases the profit per transaction. And so I wouldn't want to see any dealer give that up. We have rules here too, and the rules, of course, are designed to protect the consumer. But I do think that by offering customers 100% of the products 100% of the time will yield a better result for both the customer and for the dealership. Many times, the dealers that just sell the car, they find that the customers leave the dealership and then they go and they customize the car themselves. They add accessories and they add other things. And isn't it a shame that we could offer those products to the customers at a lower price, put it into their financing, make it a part of the transaction, and do that and not lose those other incremental profit opportunities. So I think, again, many different ways of people are doing it, but I think offering 100% of the customers, 100% of the products, 100% of the time, the 300% rule is one of the hallmarks of a profit strategy for us.
So what you're actually saying is you are selling the car, and then it will always be in the process that you always offer them a financing deal, an insurance deal, an extended guarantee deal.
But don't we have an obligation to explain to the customers all the options that are available? I'm providing transportation. How you pay for it's your business, but it is my responsibility to say you can pay cash for the vehicle. That's one way of doing it, not necessarily the best way. You can lease the vehicle, which is essentially renting the vehicle, and that strategy works out for many customers. And here are the benefits to doing that. And here's what the finance offerings are for us. And the same thing with a vehicle service contract offering. That if a customer is going to hold on to the car for an extended period of time, extended warranties end up being very cost-effective ways of customers protecting their investment.
So you actually see it as an obligation to the consumer to do it right.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to know everything that's available, and I have, as a consumer, I have the right to say no. But let me know. Let me not find out that I'm paying $600 a month to finance a vehicle, and I could have paid $300 to lease it. And boy, that $300 would give me an extra $300 a month that I could use to pay my other household bills. And many people might find that that's a benefit to them, but if it's not offered, the customers don't realize it. And you and I are sitting, living next to each other, we're driving the same car, but you're paying $300 more, and you own it, and I don't own it. But what I have is $300 extra cash a month, and at the end of the day, I'd rather own the cash than the car.
Yeah, I can imagine that one as well. Also, Brian, you were the first dealer in the world which actually proved that you can work together with Google very closely, and also with Google Home and Google Voice, etc., to make appointments for the service drive. See you Google or more perhaps Apple as a competitor or as a partner?
Wow. I see Google as a partner. I see Apple as a future competitor. And
why?
Why? Because they've hired 1,000 automotive engineers, and they are working on building a car. This is the worst kept secret in the automotive industry. It is the worst kept secret. And, aren't they going to be a formidable competitor? They don't have customers. They have raging and raving fans. I love my iPhone. My iPhone is usually not too far away from me 24 hours a day. And that kind of loyalty is equity that they've got, that they don't have to build they've already got it. They know something about battery technology. They know something about design. They know something about manufacturing. They know something about ergonomics. And I'm being tongue-in-cheek when I say they know something about it. They're among the world's best in each of those categories. Yeah. So when it comes to design, battery technology, ergonomics, and desirability, and you put that together and they create a car, gosh, I want to see what it looks like. I want to touch it. I want to feel it. And that's going to cause, that competition is going to cause every manufacturer to have to step up their game. And it will be an interesting world that we're living in over the next 3 to 5 years.
And is Apple then, if they made the car and they have it available tomorrow, for example, are they going to sell it with negotiation, or is it one price selling, you think?
Oh, one price selling. I mean, this negotiation stuff, it wasn't started by the dealers. It was actually started by the consumers, and it was started by oversupply and inventory. Isn't it strange and interesting that with this COVID and the shortage of vehicles, the pandemic, that all of a sudden we've gone back to one price selling, and we've taken the negotiation out of it. I'd love to believe that we can do that. I think the consumers win when you do that, and I think the dealers win when we do that. But that's reliant on having a somewhat restricted supply of inventory. And I think as soon as full production can get back for the manufacturers, full production will get back for the manufacturers, and we're going to see some downward pressure on pricing and margins once that happens.
Yeah, and then the negotiation starts again.
I believe so.
Yeah. Brian, I have one question of my own and then a few questions from the audience about lead follow-up. You are getting a lot of leads in your dealership. Are you structured like a BDC, or are you structured that the salespeople are going to follow up the leads? How does it work with Paragon?
No, we have a business development center, of course. Those leads are precious, and they have to be treated and handled that way. The business development center takes the leads, and one portion of it, our direct purchasing team will handle a transaction from start to finish online, and that would include delivering a car directly to the consumer. But the business development center is going to handle the incoming calls. Mm-hmm. We have an outsourced BDC to handle the enormous task of reaching out to our database to try and sell cars, and that group is making some 60,000 calls a month on our behalf to keep the team going. So there's two components: there's an internal BDC and there's an outsourced BDC to meet the needs of the dealership.
Okay, and then about some questions, because I'm getting a question from Michael Audience, for example. He asked, and I know the answer, that what actually are you selling, new and used, and how many on a monthly basis?
Monthly, our Honda store has been selling 1,100 new and used cars. That breaks down 700 new, 400 used. Our Acura store is selling just under 400 cars. That breaks down to about 260 new and 140 used per month. And so the two stores are selling combined about 1,600 cars a month.
Yeah, so 1,600 is about 15,000 plus a year.
It's 50 cars a day, and it's I don't know, on a monthly annual basis that comes out to about 15,000 or so.
But the stores are not that big, right?
They're really, well, and the footprint's not that big, but what we're able to put out of the stores has been pretty good, pretty significant, and we're going to have to increase that. I mean, that's going to today, as the number of dealers shrinks, our output has to go up. We are seeing consolidation. I think that will continue. Less dealers will be around, and they'll be expected to produce more.
Yeah. One other question, last question, I think, from Michel van Room. You talked with Michel in one of the fiscal events, and he asked about the turn, right? 18 till 22 times the turn. How do you buy the inventory? What do you do different? Are you buying it from the service lane? Are you going to go on Greg list? Are you going to the I don't know the English word at the moment, the veilingen, the auctions?
Well, no. I mean, I don't want to be the person paying the most for the car, right? At the auction, the only way you get a car is you pay the most, and that really hurts profit. I do like to manufacture used cars, and the way you manufacture used cars, I think, as Michelle pointed out, is through the service lane. Our service lane has about 150 customers a month going through there. And isn't this a great time to make an offering to the customer that we can take you out of your current car, put you into a brand new car, and reduce your monthly payment, or keep your monthly payment about the same? This opportunity, this window, is not going to be there forever. And it's time that we get really good at this process. And we need to realize we need a paradigm shift. We're not interrupting the customer's day when we do this. We're making the customer's day. We're providing incredible value. Let's face it, interest rates are not going to be lower than they are now. If anything, they're going to start to creep up. So this creates a real opportunity for us to take customers out of a higher interest rate loan, put them into a lower interest rate loan, and potentially spread out and lock in that low interest rate loan for a long period of time. And I would ask people to just look, if you had an apartment and you had an apartment that you could lease at below market value, well, then it's to your advantage to take the longest potential lease that you could at the below market value. And I think it's the same thing with an automobile. If you can get an automobile now at a below market value interest rate, then you want to take that loan out as long as you can and get out of the current loan that you're in. I think that creates tremendous upside for the customers and for the dealership.
But Brian, to buy your used car inventory from the service lane, is that also a mandatory thing, or it just happened? Or are you pushing your people that they are also going to offer 100% of the people in the service lane?
You know, I'd be remiss if I said we're offering 100%. We're trying to concentrate on the customers that we identify in the service lane that are in equity. And we're going to define equity a little bit different, Paul. We're going to define equity as somebody that we could take out of their current car, put into a new car at a similar monthly payment. Their used car does not necessarily need to be in an equity position, but so long as we can make that value proposition where it's an exchange, well, we think that makes a lot of sense. And let's face it, you've got really low interest rates right now, and you've got higher used car valuations than ever before. So that's causing the difference, or the amount that the customer has to pay, to be very small. And this is creating value. It's our obligation to tell everybody about this. If you can lower my monthly phone bill, and wouldn't it be great if your carrier told you, hey, Paul, you're on this plan, switch to this plan, you can get the same benefits, but it's going to cost you less. I think there's an obligation. And isn't it frustrating when you're a long-time customer of a utility, cable television, or phone, and you find out that they're offering better rates to their new customers than they're offering to you as a loyal customer? Well, I think the same thing is true in our business. Isn't it a shame that sometimes the new customers can get a better rate and or deal than some of our existing customers? So one of the ways that we can offset that is by making these new and better offerings available to everybody. Customers still have a right to say no, but I think at least we should be making the offering.
Yeah, so to explain to the audience, in equity means that in the administration, the car is valued at 15 and the market price is 16, right? And then you say that car is very interesting. And if the car is in the administration for 15 and the value is now 12, you don't go after it.
That's right. We're going to concentrate on the lower hanging fruit, as it were, on the customers that we think are easier to sell. A customer who just purchased a car 6 months ago, well, maybe that's not a customer we're going to talk to. And I'll tell you, it's surprising because many times we sell those customers too. But for the most part, that's not the ideal customer to approach.
I can imagine that. Brian, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for your precious time to talk to us, to our audience in the Netherlands and in Belgium as well, because I saw some Belgian people as well in the stream. So thank you for that one.
Great, thank you.
And we will be in touch about our event then in March, April next year. And we love to have you here back, and then maybe you can bring your wife to go to the UK as well.
Oh, that'd be great. That'd be great.
And thank you for your time, and really appreciate it. And if people want to follow you, the best way to follow you is on Instagram or LinkedIn. What's the best
either
thing?
Or Instagram, LinkedIn, and I love communicating with my brothers and sisters in the automobile business in Europe. I learned so much from them and the perspective that they have versus what we have here. And I love those outside perspectives. So it's great. LinkedIn or Instagram would be great.
Okay, thank you, Brian, and have a great meeting with Instagram, etc. In your on the back, where you're at now. And thank you for all your time.
Thank you, Paul.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Dank u wel voor het luisteren naar de DCDW podcast van Paul de Vries met de missie om de online automotive beter te maken. Vond u deze podcast interessant? Abonneer dan meteen via Spotify, Soundcloud of iTunes en deel deze podcast via LinkedIn met uw netwerk. De DCDW podcast van Paul de Vries wordt mede mogelijk gemaakt door de volgende partners: Marktplaats, Calldrip, CARMEN Automotive BDC, Findio, Used Car Controller en tweedehands.be.